Hi there, I'd like to take on a little tutorial today on using some products and software that you maybe already have access to but have never thought about using or thought were maybe a little bit too hard. This is a Dimension, Adobe Dimension view of a scene, it's called, that I made just using free objects and characters that you have access to. So let me go ahead and show this to you. And what you can actually do is you can use this and export it out and put it into your Captivate projects. So let's take a look and see how we can do that today. I'm going to hide this finished scene and we're going to go get this character right here. I'm going to switch over to the internet and I'm going to come on down to Firefox and I'm going to open up a program called Adobe Mixamo. You may not even know it exists. It's a program that has a series of characters and what is also called animations that are available to you. So what I did here is I'm over in my area here, and let me close this little cartoon out. Here's a bunch of characters that are already up in Mixamo for you to use. There's male, there's female, there's fantasy characters, cartoon characters. So what I did is I'm over here on characters, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to type in cartoon. By the way, Mixamo is free. You don't even need the Creative Cloud. You just need to go to Mixamo.com and sign in. So here's a bunch of cartoon characters. The one I picked today was Amy right here. So I'm going to pick Amy, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to close this little item in the upper left corner where I searched for cartoon, and I'm going to go to animations. And so there are hundreds and hundreds of animations up here. If I were to reload Mixamo here just for a second, you would see that Amy comes into here looking like what's called a T-pose. And that's the standard 3D character pose, it's called, for rigging or animating characters. Well, all these animations are already in Mixamo. You can actually click up here and search, and you've got these categories: combat, adventure, sport, dance, fantasy, superhero. Those are already available to you. What I want to do is I want to find one where I can have Amy here pointing. So I'm going to type in a search for Pointing. And here are a whole different animations. These are just samples. So what I'm going to do here is, here's one, sitting and pointing. Let me click on that. So what this does, that applies this baked animation, it's called, to Amy. And then you have some options over here: overdrive, character arm space, trim the number of frames of the animation. You can also come over in this area and press and drag and kind of go around the 3D character. I'm going to come over here on overdrive, and you have to kind of experiment with these items. So I'm going to come over here to overdrive. I'm going to move it down to 0, and most of the time that just slows the animation down. Character and arm space, we'll see how far the arms are next to the torso or the chest. And notice on every one of there's a reset. So you can actually set something. If you don't like it, reset it back to the default. And then some of the characters and animations will have more things that you can adjust. Right now, this is exactly what I'd like to have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to download this animation and I'm going to bring it into Photoshop. So let's go ahead and click on download. Now this is key. You've got to go up under format and you've got to change it to Kaleda.dae, and I may be mispronouncing that. Everything else I'm going to leave the same. But this is the format. So let me click download. So now it's going to take a second to get the Amy character animated to sitting and pointing, figuring out what frames I have, and then I'm going to download this file to my laptop. I'm going to click OK. So this went actually into my downloads folder. So I'm going to minimize that. I'm actually going to close it here for a second. So now I'm done in Mixamo. Now I'm going to go up under File and Quit. If I come back to Mixamo, Amy should still be here, and this animation should still be applied. So I'm going to quit out of Firefox. Now, what I need to do is go to my downloads here, and I'm going to look at sitting and pointing, and you'll notice two items here, sitting and pointing.dae. That's the character file. In the folder above it are textures. This is what makes up the look of the character, the depth of the character, making it look realistic, we'll say. So I'm going to double click on this .dae file, and it's going to automatically open into Photoshop. It's going to come in here. It's going to say, here's the name of the file. Here's the size in millimeters, all this. You know what? I'm just clicking OK. The nice thing is, once I get this character into dimensions, I can resize it. Now, the first thing that you want to do if you're in Photoshop and you're reaching into areas that you never thought you'd ever touch, like 3D, I'm going to have you go under Window to Workspace, and I'm going to have you pick 3D. I'm actually going to reset mine to show you how I have it set up. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here in the lower right corner where I have a 3D panel. I'm going to come over here to Layers and bring this up. Between 3D, Layers, and Properties, and one more thing, down at the bottom I have a Timeline panel, and I'm going to open that up. Now, if you don't have the Timeline panel, you can go under Window and pick Timeline. We're going to need that open. Okay, so we have our panels up here. Now, I understand you may have never come into 3D in Photoshop, and this is not a tutorial on teaching you everything about 3D. There's no way. I don't even know everything about 3D. But I do know over in this 3D panel, there's some important things for you to know. Scene. This is picked. If I come over on top of this area, see this little satellite circle here? I can press and drag, and I can move this around and move the scene around, the 3D scene. I can turn it this way. Now, I could come down here and click on where it says skeleton and do the same thing and move the skeleton, but I'm trying to make this as easy as possible. The next thing I want to do is I want to look at this and see how it is lit. Currently, there's what is called an infinite light. Pretend it's the sun. How do I check this? Well, I'm going to come down here at the bottom of the 3D panel, and I'm going to pick where it's called Render. Render. Now it's actually going in and calculating the 3D character we downloaded with the light source so we can take a look at it. Now, you could let this run for a long time if you want to. I'm actually going to hit Escape to stop that. Now, I click back on here. I'm back on my scene. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to do this. I'm going to come to the bottom of my screen where it says Timeline, and notice it has this timeline. If I come over here in the lower left corner on Timeline and click the play button, it will play the animation that was baked into Amy on the web. Isn't that awesome? Look at that. Now, I'm going to click the square and pause it. I want you to know this is a playhead down here in Timeline. And I can actually press on this and move it back and forth. And in video work, this is called scrubbing. Today, I'm only going to come along the timeline and pick a frame of this video that I want to use within my Captivate project. So I'm going to pick this frame right here. I like this frame. I can go up to scene. I can move it around a little bit and take a look at it. And you're going to be able to do the same thing of moving this once you get it into what's called Adobe Dimensions. Okay, so that's the frame I want to export of this animation. In fact, let me see if I can move it a little bit earlier or later to get it away from her face here a little bit. Yeah, let's see. How about right there? And then maybe I'll adjust it once I get into Dimension. Okay, so I've got the playhead where I want it. The next thing, you go under the 3D menu in Photoshop and you come down to Export 3D Layer. Now this is really important. I cannot bring a DAE file into Adobe Dimension. I can bring what's called a wavefront OBJ file or an object file. And if you're going to do this for any period of time, you're going to remember you always want to work with OBJ files. I'm going to leave everything at its default, and I'm going to click OK. And then we're going to pick a location where to save this and to give it a name. So let me go ahead and I'm going to name this Amy1 underscore sitting and pointing, and I'm going to save it into a directory or a folder here called Adobe Captivate Usage. You can see before I've already done this several times. So we're going to let this export. Now remember, it's not exporting the entire animation here, only this frame. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to File and I'm going to quit out of Photoshop here, under Photoshop to quit. And I'll save this as a Photoshop file. And I'll save it into my Captivate Usage folder. There we go. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to come over here to Adobe Dimension. If you've never worked in Adobe Dimension because you didn't either know it was there, or it's a 3D program, you say, I can't do that. I'm not a 3D person. I don't have time to learn this program. This is probably one of the best programs ever created by Adobe. Not too much behind Photoshop and Illustrator, because this gives you the opportunity to go into 3D and work in it and not have to be a mathematical genius or anything like this. So I am going to go in here and I'm going to open up a new file here in a second. Let me go File, New to show you how this starts. New. Well, do you want to see that again? So what happened is it closed my other file and it opened up this view called Untitled. Now I'm going to open up or bring in that 3D character that we exported out of Photoshop. You can do this lots of ways. One way is File, Import, 3D Model. I'm going to go to my folder, Adobe, Captivate, usage. And what I'm looking for is Amy1 sitting and pointing OBJ. All these other files that you see above here, the most of those are textures that are being applied to make the look of Amy, but it will automatically connect with those. We just have to double click here. Now, you come up and you don't see anything. Well, the first thing I want you to do is don't panic. You're going to go under Camera, and you're going to come down to Frame All and Reset Camera, for instance. Well, there's Amy. So now Amy is in Adobe Dimension. She has this little widget turned on down here. And this widget controls rotation on the y-axis, and there's rotation on the x-axis, and there's rotation on the z-axis. Now, I don't expect you to know all this. If you've never done Dimension, then there's a little bit of learning you're going to do of the basics. So now what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to bring in a table for her to have. And over here on the right-hand side, by Starter Assets, and I'm looking at Models, these are all built into Dimension. Let's say we come down here and we find a table. I'm going to double-click and put that table there. Now notice how small the table is compared to Amy. If I click on Amy here and look over here under Size, she's 393 centimeters high. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the table. I'm going to come over here and be careful. There's a little constraint link here I have to click. So let's make this 400 centimeters high. Enter. Now, can I move this with these arrows? I can move it this way. Let's say I keep the table right there, and I'm going to click on Amy. And I'm going to come down and I'm going to rotate Amy here. And I can click back on the table and I can move it around. And you're going to find out there's other views. And again, this is not a Dimension course. I'm just teasing you here. But under Camera, Camera View, I can switch to Top View. And this will help me align things better. Let me go back to another view. Camera, Camera View, let's say Front. Now, the table is here. It looks a little small. So I can come over here where it says Size, and I can uncheck the little link for Constraint Proportions, and I want to make this table wider. So I'm going to press and hold over the Y value, and I'm going to drag this, and it looks like Y is making it taller. Boy, undo that. How about X? Well, that looks pretty good, but notice as soon as I went from Y to X, it turned this constraint back on. So I'm going to turn this off, and I'm going to increase the width on the x-axis. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now, I'm going to click. I don't have anything selected. I'm actually on my environment. If I hold down the number 1 key, I can orbit or change the camera view here. Now, next thing I'd like to do is I'd like to have Amy have a laptop on the table here. So I'm going to come over here in my models that come with Adobe Dimension, and I'm going to find one here for laptop. Let's see here, 16 by 9 laptop. Double click. It is so small that it doesn't even look like, it belongs here, but we need to scale this up. So just for a second, I'm going to click on table. And I'm going to notice the width of that table was like 568. Remember we changed that? So let me click back here on laptop. See if I can click on it. And I can come over here and I'm going to turn on constraint proportions for size because I don't want it distorted. And I'm going to type in 500 centimeters and I'm going to hit enter. Then I'm going to take my up arrow to move on the y-axis. I'm going to take my blue arrow to move on the depth of the z-axis. I need to rotate this. So you're going to find out that you can go into Dimension and you can hit the R key for rotate. And this gives me a little rotation globe. I'm going to turn it till it's facing her. It looks a little big. So, in Dimension, to get back to the standard arrow, I'm going to hit V for victory. Then I'm going to go over here to size, make sure proportions turned on, and let's drop this. Let's just make a guesstimate. 450 centimeters, enter. Now that looks a little better. I'm going to click on here and I'm going to move my laptop down till it looks like it's almost squishing into the scene here. Now we need something for Amy to sit on here. We don't need anything really fancy. I don't even see a chair over here. So how about we go up here under a basic shape called a cube. Let me come over here on this cube and I'm going to turn on the constraint proportions and I'm going to type in, how about 300 centimeters, enter. And I'll move that over so she can actually sit on that. I'll click off of it. Now I'm just on the environment in the upper right. I'm going to hold my 1 key down. It looks like the cube may be a little bit tall. So I'm going to click on the cube. And over here, because it is a cube, I do have the ability to change its width, its height, and its depth. Let me change the height down here a little bit. In fact, Amy looks like she's tipped a little bit. Let me hold down under environment, the 1 key. Oh, she is kind of at a weird angle, isn't she? Let me click on her. Let me hit R for rotate, and let me rotate her a little bit. There, now she has maybe a little bit better posture. Let's hit V to go back to our normal arrows. Let's move her over a little bit. Let's click on the cube and move it over a little bit. Let's click on environment and hold down this arrow. Now we see there's a gap. So we're going to click on the cube and I'm going to change the height again. Let's see how that looks. I'm going to hold the 1 key to get rotate. That looks pretty good. Let's look here. Now, that looks pretty doggone good here. Now I'm holding the 1 key down and I'm just rotating the camera around. So let's say that you like a certain pose here that you want to bring into Captivate. All right. Now, right now, I'm clipping off the foot here. So another thing that you're going to learn on basic Captivate is 1 will rotate, 2, press and drag will move around the camera on the scene. 3 will allow you to zoom in or zoom out, or dolly in and dolly out. So let's say, number 1 again, I like this. This is what I want to bring into Captivate. Now I know there's a billion things you got to learn here, but over on the side where it says Scene, it says Side Table, Laptop, Cube. In fact, before I do this, I have the cube selected. I think I'd like to have the cube look like a bluish plastic. So over here on the left is a little materials. And I'm going to say plastic, and I'm going to drag it on the cube is one way you can do it. Over here in the scene area, it says cube, plastic, base color. I'm going to change the base color here. In fact, let's see if we can click here and do something fancy. Can I click on the eyedropper and click on her hair? There, it's kind of the same color as her hair. I don't like that. I think I'm going to move it back over here so it's another shade of blue. Yeah, I'm not very good at color. How about a green? Okay, now there's an up arrow over here. The arrow points to the left, which means I can click and go up the hierarchy here and see all my objects. One thing that's very strange to me, these Mixamo characters, in this case it's called character 64. If I double click on that, there's different properties down here. Opacity, roughness. I don't know why they come in with what's called a metallic bump of 50%. I'm actually going to move that down. She still has a little bit of bling there in her shirt, but that's the way I want it to look. Now, last thing here, we're going to go over to Captivate here. There's a little symbol in the upper corner here called Show, Hide, Render, Preview. When this is turned off, you're just going to see the model without any lights or really anything. So you can click here, and it will turn on and give you a better idea of how this is going to look when what is called it's rendered out. So this is just kind of a fair to middle quality preview. Now, I want to send this out of here so I can bring it into Captivate. Up in the upper left corner, it says Render. Over here, we're going to give this a name, Amy Demo Point. You can do low, medium, and high. The higher the quality, the slower it is to render. Let's do a medium, and I'm going to output a PSD file. For now, ignore this ping. I've been battling this for a couple of years with Adobe. A ping file should give me a transparent background, but it doesn't. So they can't tell me why yet, so forget about ping, just go with PSD. We're going to come over here and I'm going to save this. I can click on here and I'm going to save it into my Captivate usage folder. I'm going to click OK and I'm going to click Render. It's now going to start to render this out. It's going to eventually give me an estimation on how long it's going to take. Sometimes, or most of the time, I find this overly optimistic. Okay, it's rendered. It actually took 2.5 minutes to render this. So the next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back to the upper left and I'm going to click on Design. As you work with Adobe Dimension and you're getting your things arranged and situated, you're changing your camera views to see how things look from the top, for alignment from the different sides and all that. Once you get it the way you like, maybe what you want to do is actually render out a lower quality file so it doesn't take so long. Once you get everything situated, then render out a higher quality file. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to save this file so I can come back to it, and we'll just name this Amy Demo CPT Captivate. So now what I'm going to do is we're going to come over and I'm going to quit Dimension and I'm going to open up Photoshop. Now Photoshop's going to load up here and we're going to bring in that PSD file we just rendered out of Dimension. So I'm going to click Open. I'm going to go to my Captivate folder. I'm going to find Amy Demo Point PSD. The key thing here is the Layers panel. Right now, I have a layer viewed here called Rendered. Let me drag this over a little bit so you can see it. Rendered Image Reduce Noise. Notice the checkerboards here. But why does it have a white background? That's because this is on. Turn off background color. Now, I need to go up here and do a file, save as, and I want to save it as a PNG file here so I can bring it into Captivate and have a transparent background. Save. Okay. All right, it's done. I'm going to close out of Photoshop. I'm going to save changes. I'm going to go under Media to Image. I'm going to go find that PNG file. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to find my Captivate usage. I'm going to find Amy Point PNG. As soon as this comes in, it's probably a little bit large, which is good, because if we have to shrink it, it actually improves the quality of Amy's graphic here. I'm going to go in the upper right corner, I'm going to pick Properties, and I'm going to pick Options, and I'm going to Constraint Proportions is on. I'm just going to drag over this and reduce it down maybe to, let's say, this amount. I can also press and hold, just like you would any other graphic within here. I can go to a corner, get a hold of the double arrowhead, hold the Shift key, and I can scale it down. But look at that. I mean, that is beautiful stuff here. And this has all been done with stuff that you already have if you're a member of the Creative Cloud. Mixamo itself is free. So I'm just letting you know, if you're not taking advantage of this, you really should be. Now, what have I got at stake for all this? Well, I've written a book called Adobe Dimension, Beyond the Fundamentals, and it's on sale at Amazon. It was just released. It is not an introductory book to teach you about Dimension. It is a step beyond that. But I just want to let you know that these tools are here, that you should be using those tools. If you have any questions, just drop them in the comments, and maybe we'll do another tutorial on working some other things. Thank you very much for taking time, and have a great day.